If you've ever been hiking in a national park, what I'm about to tell you might make you think twice about wandering off the trail. Since the early 1900s, thousands of people have vanished in America's national parks under circumstances that defy explanation. Not lost hikers who got turned around, not accidents. These are disappearances that follow a pattern so specific, so bizarre, that when you hear the details, you'll understand why the government doesn't want to talk about it. This is the missing 411 phenomenon. And by the end of this investigation, you'll see why some people believe there's something in our national parks that we're not being told about. In 2001, a former police detective named David Paulides started investigating missing persons cases in national parks. He wasn't looking for a pattern. He stumbled onto one by accident. What he found was disturbing. Over 1,400 people have vanished in national parks over the past century. But it's not the number that's strange. It's how they vanish and where they're found. Let me give you the pattern, and as I describe it, remember, these are real cases, real people, real families still searching for answers. First, the missing are often found near water, rivers, lakes, streams, even if they disappeared miles from any water source. Second, when bodies are found, the clothing is often missing, shoes especially, in freezing temperatures. Sometimes the person is found completely naked with their clothes folded neatly nearby. Third, they're found in areas that were already searched multiple times, sometimes dozens of times, by trained search and rescue teams with dogs. Fourth, the dogs can't track them. Search dogs that can track a scent for miles suddenly lose the trail, as if the person just vanished into thin air. Fifth, they're found at elevations or distances that make no logical sense. A 3-year-old found 12 miles away at the top of a mountain, an experienced hiker found in the opposite direction of where they were heading. And sixth, many who survive have no memory of what happened, or they tell stories that sound impossible. David Paulides has documented over 1,000 cases that fit this exact pattern. The government won't give him the full list. In fact, the National Park Service claims they don't keep a centralized list of missing persons. Think about that. The organization responsible for millions of acres of wilderness doesn't track people who go missing there. Let me walk you through some of the cases, and you tell me if this sounds normal. Dennis Martin, 6 years old, Great Smoky Mountains National Park, June 1969. Dennis was playing with his brothers. They were hiding behind bushes, planning to jump out and scare their parents. It was a game. They'd done it 100 times. Dennis ran behind the bush. His brothers counted to 10. When they came around the bush, Dennis was gone. The largest search in the park's history was launched. Hundreds of volunteers, helicopters, search dogs. They searched for 9 days straight. The dogs lost his scent immediately, as if he'd just disappeared into thin air. 1,600 people searched that area. They found nothing. No clothing, no footprints, no trace. Dennis Martin was never found. Here's what makes it stranger. During the search, a key witness came forward. A man reported seeing a humanoid figure carrying something over its shoulder, moving through the woods at high speed, something he described as not quite human. The Park Service dismissed the report. Jaryd Atadero, 3 years old, Colorado, October 1999. Jaryd was on a hiking trail with a Christian youth group, 11 adults, 13 children. They stopped for a break. When they counted the kids, Jaryd was missing. They'd been on the trail for less than an hour. The trail was narrow, surrounded by dense forest. No one saw him leave. Search teams arrived within hours. They searched for days. Nothing. 4 years later, hikers found his clothes on a mountain, 7 miles from where he disappeared. The clothes were barely weathered, as if they'd been placed there recently, not 4 years ago. His shoes were missing. The area where his clothes were found had been searched thoroughly, multiple times, by professionals. How did everyone miss them for 4 years? Stacy Ann Arras, 14 years old, Yosemite National Park, July 1981. Stacy was on a trip with her father and several others. They were near Sunrise High Sierra Camp. She went to take photographs of a nearby lake. Her father could see the lake from where he stood. She was gone for 2 minutes. When her father looked up, she was gone. Her camera was never found. Her film was never recovered. No clothing, no footprints, nothing. The area around the lake was flat, open. You could see for hundreds of yards. There was nowhere to hide. She vanished in broad daylight in an open area with her father watching. Stacy Ann Arras was never found. These aren't isolated incidents. David Paulides has documented over 1,000 cases that fit this exact pattern. The children who vanish silently, adults who disappear without a trace, bodies found in impossible locations, clothing missing, search dogs that lose the scent. And here's what's truly disturbing. Many of these disappearances happen in clusters, specific geographic locations where multiple people vanish over decades. Yosemite, Great Smoky Mountains, Rocky Mountain National Park, Crater Lake, Mount Shasta. These are called cluster areas, hotspots where the disappearances follow the exact same pattern. So what's happening? What explains the pattern? Let me walk you through the theories. Some are logical, some are disturbing, and some are absolutely terrifying. Theory 1. People get lost and die of exposure. This is what the Park Service says. People underestimate the wilderness, they wander off trails, they get disoriented, they die. And yes, that happens. All the time. But it doesn't explain the pattern. It doesn't explain how a 3-year-old walks 12 miles uphill. It doesn't explain missing shoes in freezing weather. It doesn't explain bodies found in areas that were searched dozens of times. It doesn't explain why search dogs lose the scent. And it doesn't explain the clusters. Why do these specific locations have 10 times more disappearances than similar parks, with similar terrain and visitor numbers? Theory 2. Animal attacks. Bears, mountain lions, wolves. Again, this happens. But large predators leave evidence: blood, torn clothing, drag marks, remains. In these cases, there's nothing. No signs of struggle, no blood, no tracks. And predators don't carry victims 12 miles uphill to the top of mountains. Theory 3. Human predators. Serial killers, abductors, traffickers. This is the theory many families believe, and statistically it's possible. But it doesn't explain the impossible locations where bodies are found. It doesn't explain the missing shoes, the memory loss in survivors. And it doesn't explain cases where people vanish in seconds with witnesses nearby. Theory 4. Disorientation and paradoxical undressing. When people experience severe hypothermia, they sometimes remove their clothing. It's called paradoxical undressing. The body's thermoregulation fails, and the person feels burning hot. This could explain the missing clothes. But it doesn't explain how people end up miles from where they disappeared. It doesn't explain the clusters, the failed search efforts. And it doesn't explain cases in summer when hypothermia isn't a factor. So if the logical explanations don't fit, what's left? This is where it gets controversial, where some people think David Paulides crosses a line, where the theories become less scientific and more speculative. But the families of the missing deserve to hear all possibilities, even the ones that sound insane. Theory 5. Underground cave systems. Some researchers believe there are unmapped cave systems beneath national parks. People fall into hidden entrances. They end up in underground networks. Their bodies surface miles away through connected passages. This could explain some cases: the impossible distances, the lack of scent trails above ground. But it doesn't explain everything. It doesn't explain bodies found on mountain peaks, or how a 3-year-old navigates miles of cave systems. Theory 6. Criminal operations. Some believe there are organized groups operating in national parks, possibly connected to trafficking rings. They target isolated hikers, they know the terrain, they know how to avoid detection. This is a terrifying possibility, and it might explain some disappearances. But again, it doesn't explain the pattern, the missing shoes, the memory loss in survivors, the clusters. Theory 7. Government experiments. Some theorize that certain areas of national parks are used for classified military or scientific experiments. People stumble into restricted zones, they're removed, the government covers it up. This sounds like conspiracy theory, but there is precedent. The military has conducted experiments in remote areas before, and it would explain why the Park Service doesn't keep centralized records, why certain areas have more disappearances. But it doesn't explain cases from 100 years ago, before modern military operations. Theory 8. Interdimensional or paranormal activity. This is where
David Paulides carefully distances himself. He presents the cases. He doesn't explicitly endorse theories. But many researchers believe something paranormal is happening in these cluster areas. Some say portals, dimensional doorways that open randomly. People step through without realizing it. Some say cryptids, Bigfoot, other unknown creatures that inhabit deep wilderness. Some say these areas have unusual magnetic or electromagnetic properties that cause disorientation or even time slips. It sounds crazy, but when you exhaust all logical explanations, what's left? And here's what makes it harder to dismiss: the Native American perspective. Many of these cluster areas are considered sacred or forbidden by Native American tribes. They have oral traditions going back centuries about people who vanish in these places, about beings that live in the deep forests, about areas where humans shouldn't go. Mount Shasta, the Great Smoky Mountains, areas around Crater Lake. The stories vary by tribe, but the theme is consistent. There are places in the wilderness where something exists that we don't understand, and people who enter those places sometimes don't return. Were these just cautionary tales to keep people safe, or were they documenting something real? When indigenous people say a place is forbidden, and then modern disappearances follow the exact locations they warned about, maybe we should listen. Not everyone who goes missing stays missing. Some return, and their stories are disturbing. A young boy found after 3 days. He couldn't explain where he'd been. He said he'd been with a grandmother who took care of him. His grandmother had died years before. A man found 12 miles from his campsite. He had no memory of walking there. He said he felt compelled to walk in a specific direction, like something was calling him. A woman who vanished for 2 days. She described being in a fog. Time didn't feel normal. She couldn't see or hear the search teams even though they passed within yards of her. These aren't hallucinations from exposure. These are consistent testimonies from multiple unrelated cases. Something is interfering with perception, with memory, with the normal passage of time. Here's what makes it truly disturbing. When David Paulides requested a list of missing persons from the National Park Service, they refused. They said no such list exists. He filed Freedom of Information Act requests. The Park Service responded that it would cost over $1 million to compile the information. Over $1 million to provide a list of people who went missing in their parks. Why would it cost that much unless the number of cases is massive? Unless they're deliberately making it difficult to access? The Park Service claims they don't keep centralized records because each park is managed independently. But that doesn't make sense. The FBI keeps missing persons records. Local police keep records. Why not the parks? Some believe there's a deliberate effort to downplay the scope of the problem, to avoid panic, to protect tourism revenue. Others believe the government knows more than they're saying, that certain areas are off-limits for reasons they can't publicly disclose. Either way, the lack of transparency is troubling. This isn't historical. People are still vanishing. Paul Fugate, January 2021, Chiricahua National Monument, Arizona. Experienced hiker, trail runner, vanished on a well-marked trail in perfect weather. His van was found at the trailhead, his belongings inside, no signs of struggle, no indication he was planning to leave. Search teams found nothing. Dogs couldn't track him. 6 days later, his body was found off-trail in an area that had been searched multiple times. He was missing his shoes. The official cause of death was exposure, but it didn't explain how he got there or why his shoes were gone. Cian McLaughlin, June 2021, Grand Teton National Park, Wyoming. 27 years old, experienced outdoorsman, vanished on a popular hiking trail. Massive search effort, nothing. His body was found in October in an area that search teams had covered thoroughly, at an elevation that made no sense based on where he was hiking. No explanation for how he ended up there. No explanation for how dozens of searches missed him. These cases are still happening, right now. People are vanishing in national parks following the exact same pattern that David Paulides identified over 20 years ago. And the government still says there's no pattern, still claims there's nothing unusual about these disappearances. Let me show you the cluster map. If you plot every missing 411 case on a map, something becomes obvious. They're not random. They concentrate in specific areas. Yosemite, Great Smoky Mountains, Mount Shasta, Crater Lake, the Cascades, Rocky Mountain National Park. These areas have 10 to 20 times more disappearances than similar parks with similar terrain and visitor numbers. Why? Some say it's population. More visitors means more disappearances. But that doesn't hold up. Yellowstone has similar visitor numbers but far fewer cases. Some say it's the terrain. Dense forest, rugged mountains. But again, similar parks don't have the same rate. Something about these specific locations is different. And here's what's truly disturbing. Many of these cluster areas align with other phenomena. UFO sightings, Bigfoot encounters, reports of strange lights and sounds, unusual magnetic readings. Is that coincidence, or is there a connection? Some researchers believe these areas have properties we don't understand. Dimensional thin spots, electromagnetic anomalies, something that makes them dangerous in ways we can't measure. David Paulides identified a profile. Not every missing person fits it, but the ones that do share specific characteristics. They're often highly intelligent or fit, experienced hikers, people you wouldn't expect to get lost. They're often found near water or boulder fields. German or English descent. This sounds random, but the statistical correlation is significant. Bad weather often follows the disappearance, storms that hamper search efforts. The person vanished in the afternoon or evening, not morning. Dogs can't track them. When found, they're discovered in an area previously searched, often by water, often at a higher elevation than where they disappeared. Survivors have memory loss or describe the experience as dreamlike. Why would these specific factors cluster together unless there's a cause we don't understand? Let me be fair. Many people think the missing 411 phenomena is confirmation bias, cherry-picking cases that fit a pattern while ignoring the ones that don't. Skeptics say David Paulides is selling books and movies, creating mystery where there is none, that every single case has a logical explanation if you look hard enough. They say national parks are dangerous. People die there. The wilderness doesn't care how experienced you are. Sometimes bodies end up in strange locations because of terrain, weather, and animal activity. And they're not entirely wrong. Some missing 411 cases have been solved. Some had mundane explanations. But that doesn't explain all of them. It doesn't explain the pattern, the clusters, the consistency across decades and locations. Saying it's all coincidence requires ignoring a lot of data. So what's really happening?
Is it a single explanation or multiple factors combining to create the pattern? Maybe some cases are human predators, some are natural deaths in unfortunate locations, some are cave systems, some are animal attacks, and some are something we don't have a name for yet. I can't tell you what to believe. I can only present the evidence. Over 1,400 people have vanished, many following an identical pattern, in specific geographic clusters, with circumstances that defy conventional explanation. The government won't provide a full accounting, won't acknowledge the pattern, won't investigate beyond standard search and rescue. Families are left without answers, without closure, without justice, and people keep vanishing. If you're planning to visit a national park, here's what you need to know. Stay on marked trails. The vast majority of disappearances happen when people go off trail. Never hike alone. This can't be overstated. Almost every missing 411 case involves someone who separated from their group or hiked solo. Tell someone your exact route and expected return time. Leave a detailed itinerary. Carry a GPS device and a personal locator beacon. Cell phones don't work in most wilderness areas. Trust your instincts. If an area feels wrong, leave. Multiple survivors have reported feeling watched or uncomfortable before they were lost. Be especially cautious near water and boulder fields. These are the two most common locations where people vanish. If you get lost, stay where you are. Don't keep walking. That's how people end up miles from search areas. And if you have children,
keep them in sight at all times. Most child disappearances happen in seconds when parents look away. These aren't guarantees. People who followed all these rules have still vanished, but they reduce the risk. The missing 411 phenomenon is real. The cases are documented. The pattern exists. Whether it's something explainable we haven't figured out yet, or something beyond our current understanding, we may never know for certain. What we do know is that our national parks are beautiful, awe-inspiring, and in some areas, deeply dangerous in ways we don't fully comprehend. Thousands of families are still searching for answers, still wondering what happened to their loved ones in the wilderness. And until the government provides transparency, until we get real investigations into these cluster areas, people will continue to vanish. So the next time you visit a national park, remember, stay on the trail, stay together, and if something feels wrong, trust that feeling. Because in the wilderness, there are things we don't understand, and some people who encounter them never come back. If you found this investigation compelling, hit subscribe. I cover cases like this every week, deep dives into mysteries that demand answers. And if you have your own experience in a national park, something strange you witnessed or felt, leave it in the comments. Your story might help someone else stay safe. Thanks for watching. Stay curious and stay safe out there.